All right, get ready, because we're going to take a deep dive into a pretty spectacular event, the total lunar eclipse that's happening on March 13th and 14th, 2025.
Yeah.
And it's going to be visible, get this, across the Americas, Europe, and even parts of Africa.
Wow.
Now, we're not just talking about looking up and seeing a reddish moon. We've actually got some seriously cool sources that explore this eclipse from both a scientific and an astrological perspective.
Yeah, it's amazing how one single celestial event can be looked at through all these different lenses. We've got one source focusing on the hardcore challenges this eclipse poses for a spacecraft. It's actually orbiting the moon right now. And then we'll jump into a totally different realm and explore some of the symbolic interpretations surrounding this eclipse.
Okay, before we get into the challenges and interpretations, can we break down the science first?
Yeah.
Like, why is the moon turn red during a total lunar eclipse? What's with this whole blood moon thing?
Imagine the Earth is positioned vertically between the sun and the moon. So it's blocking out all the direct sunlight. You'd think the moon would just disappear, right?
Right.
But it doesn't. Instead, it gets bathed in this kind of eerie reddish glow.
Oh, I see.
And that's because of Earth's atmosphere.
So it's almost like a giant sunset, but it's being projected onto the moon.
Exactly. Earth's atmosphere scatters the shorter wavelengths of sunlight, like blue and green, while the longer red wavelengths, those bend around the Earth and they illuminate the moon. It's the same reason sunsets look red here on Earth. But here's where it gets interesting. This scattering effect also impacts how we observe the moon from Earth and even from spacecraft, like the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or LRO.
LRO. So that's the spacecraft that's been mapping the moon for, what, over 15 years now?
Yeah, it's been up there a while.
What happens to it when the sun is blocked out for hours on end? Doesn't it run on solar power?
It does. And this eclipse is a long one. We're talking about the moon being in the Earth's shadow, or what we call the umbra, for 5 hours and 48 minutes.
What?
Now picture this. LRO's battery, after all these years in space, it's operating at about 70% capacity. That's like trying to run a marathon with a phone that's barely holding half a charge.
That sounds a bit nerve-wracking. So how does LRO even survive this cosmic blackout? I mean, do they just, like, cross their fingers and hope for the best at NASA?
Not quite. NASA engineers have a whole game plan for these eclipses. They've got strategies to make sure that LRO weathers the darkness and emerges ready to continue its mission. And one major challenge they face is just that, battery degradation in space is inevitable.
Oh, right.
It's a harsh environment up there. Extreme temperatures, radiation exposure. So designing these power systems for these really long missions, it's incredibly complex.
So what's the first step in their eclipse survival plan? Like, what do they do before LRO even enters the Earth's shadow?
Preparation is key. They make sure LRO's batteries are fully charged.
Okay.
Maximize those power reserves. Think of it like fueling up your car before a long road trip. They also preheat crucial instruments, just like you might put on a sweater before heading out into the cold. This preheating helps to stabilize the instrument's temperature and prevent potential damage during the eclipse.
So they're making sure that LRO is all bundled up and ready for that cold, dark eclipse.
Yeah, exactly.
But what happens once the sunlight is completely blocked out? How do they stretch that precious battery power?
Well, they switch LRO into what we call a minimal operational mode.
No.
So they power down any instruments that aren't totally essential for survival during the eclipse. It's like turning off lights in rooms you're not using to conserve electricity.
Right, so it's like a mini hibernation for LRO, just enough power to keep those vital systems running.
Exactly, and it's a carefully calculated dance.
I bet.
They need to keep the spacecraft alive, but they also have to make sure that it can resume normal operations as soon as the sunlight returns. It's a testament to the ingenuity of the engineers who designed and operate LRO. They're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible in space exploration.
That's incredible. They're basically choreographing this intricate dance between power conservation and scientific observation, and all while LRO is just hurtling through space.
It is a really impressive feat, but here's something else. While most of the instruments are powered down during the eclipse, there's one that actually gets to shine. It's called the Diviner Lunar Radiometer.
The Diviner Lunar Radiometer, what does that do?
It's this really cool instrument that measures the moon's surface temperature. Now, during eclipse, when the sun's heat is blocked, the moon's surface temperature drops really dramatically.
Oh, wow.
And that creates a unique opportunity for the diviner. It can actually observe these rapid temperature changes and gather valuable data about the moon's thermal properties.
So even in the darkness, LRO can still squeeze in some science. It's like, making the most of an unexpected power outage.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've covered how this lunar eclipse presents a real-life challenge for this spacecraft orbiting the moon, forcing NASA to get creative with how they manage LRO's power. But now let's switch gears completely and explore this event from a totally different perspective.
Let's dive into the world of astrology and see how this eclipse is being interpreted symbolically.
All right, bring on the cosmic insights. Now, I know we're not going to, delve into specific horoscope readings or anything like that here.
Right.
But what are some of the broader themes or questions that astrologers might explore when they interpret this particular eclipse?
Well, that's a great question. One of the key things they might consider is how this specific date and position of this eclipse aligns with astrological principles. For instance, they might look at what sign the moon is in during the eclipse.
Okay.
If it happens to be in Libra, a sign associated with balance in relationships, they might interpret this eclipse as a time for reevaluating partnerships, seeking harmony, or even making major decisions about commitments.
So it's not just about the eclipse itself, but how its energy kind of interacts with that broader astrological landscape.
Exactly. And they might also explore how the eclipse's placement in what are called the astrological houses relate to different areas of life. For example, if the eclipse falls in the 10th house, which is associated with career and public image,
Right.
they might interpret this as a period of significant professional shifts or like changes in one's reputation.
Wow. So this eclipse could be like a catalyst for change in different areas of our lives, and that all depends on its astrological significance.
That's one way to look at it, yeah. Of course, these interpretations can vary widely depending on the astrologer and the specific system that they're using.
Right.
But the general idea is that eclipses are often seen as really powerful cosmic events. They can trigger these shifts, both internally and externally.
This is already blowing my mind, and we're just scratching the surface.
We are. But before we dive deeper into those astrological interpretations, I think it's important to acknowledge that we're dealing with two very distinct ways of understanding this eclipse.
Right. On the one hand, you've got this very tangible scientific challenge of keeping a spacecraft alive during this cosmic blackout.
Right.
And on the other hand, we've got, the symbolic interpretation of this event and its potential influence on our lives even.
Yeah, it really highlights the diverse ways that we as humans try to make sense of the universe around us.
I love that. And I'm so ready to keep exploring both sides of this cosmic coin.
Well, then let's jump back into the astrological realm and see what other questions come up around this unique lunar eclipse. Astrologers, they often associate these lunar eclipses with themes of transformation and change, almost like a cosmic reset button,
Oh, interesting.
They might ask things like, what aspects of our lives are ready for a shakeup? What needs to be released to make space for something new?
So it's not just about external events shifting, but also about internal changes, like a chance for personal growth and evolution.
Exactly, yeah. Lunar eclipses are often seen as these opportunities to shed old patterns, beliefs, or even, relationships that no longer serve us. Think of it as a time for deep introspection and just letting go of what's holding us back.
That's so fascinating. And, given that this eclipse occurs during a time when a lot of cultures celebrate new beginnings, like spring in the Northern Hemisphere,
Yeah.
it seems like there's this natural synergy there.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like the cosmos are aligning to support us in making those changes.
I love that.
And this kind of brings up another interesting question that astrologers might consider.
Okay.
How can we harness the energy of this eclipse for our own personal growth?
Okay. How do we harness that energy? Are we talking about specific rituals or practices here? Because honestly, I'm always up for a little cosmic self-care.
Well, some people might choose to meditate, journal, or even perform, specific ceremonies during the eclipse. The idea is to really connect with the eclipse's energy intentionally
Okay.
and set these intentions for what you want to manifest or release in your life.
So it's almost like using the eclipse as a focal point for our own inner work.
Yeah.
Kind of like, setting those resolutions, but with a cosmic boost.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about aligning ourselves with the natural rhythms of the universe
Yeah.
and tapping into that potent energy of this celestial event.
I'm already feeling inspired to break out my journal and start brainstorming. But before I get lost in my own cosmic contemplations, I'm curious about another aspect that you mentioned earlier, this idea that lunar eclipses can actually influence our emotions and and subconscious thoughts.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Well, the moon has long been associated with our emotional world.
You're right.
And astrologers believe that eclipses can actually amplify these emotions. This particular eclipse, it might bring up hidden feelings, buried desires,
Oh, wow.
or even unresolved issues that need to be addressed.
So it's like the eclipse acts as a sort of cosmic spotlight, it's illuminating those parts of ourselves that we might usually keep hidden.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
Mm.
It can be a time of heightened sensitivity and introspection, prompting us to confront those shadows within ourselves and
Yeah.
ultimately, work towards healing and integration.
This is getting deep. So it sounds like this eclipse isn't just about, watching this cool astronomical phenomenon. It's also an invitation to embark on a journey of self-discovery and transformation.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we're not just passive observers of the cosmos, but active participants in this grand dance.
Okay, so we've explored the scientific hurdles this eclipse presents for LRO, and we've delved into the personal growth opportunities from an astrological perspective.
Right.
It's incredible how two seemingly different viewpoints can coexist and enrich our understanding of a single event.
Yeah, it really speaks to the interconnectedness of everything, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. But before we wrap up, I have one final question that's been swirling in my mind.
Okay.
We've talked about the potential impact on individuals.
Yeah. But do astrologers ever look at eclipses from a broader perspective? Like, could this eclipse have any significance on a global or societal level? They do. Astrologers, they often interpret eclipses as the symbolic representations of collective shifts and transformations.
Okay.
They might look at global events, political landscapes, or even cultural trends to see if there are any correlations with the eclipse's energy.
So are we talking about eclipses influencing, like, the fate of nations? Some kind of, like, cosmic power play?
Well, it's not quite as dramatic as that,
Okay.
but some astrologers believe that eclipses can actually act as these catalysts for change on a larger scale, highlighting areas where there's a need for adjustment or a shift in consciousness.
So it's less about, predicting specific events
Yeah.
and more about understanding those overarching themes and energies that might be at play during these times.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything and seeing how these celestial events might reflect or influence, the collective human experience.
This whole conversation has been like a wild ride.
Yeah.
We've gone from spacecraft survival strategies to cosmic self-care.
Right.
And honestly, I'm just loving how these two seemingly separate worlds can intertwine like this.
It's a testament to, that human desire to understand our place in the universe, I think, both physically and metaphorically, right?
Yeah.
Whether we're, analyzing data from a lunar orbiter or contemplating ancient astrological wisdom, we're ultimately, seeking meaning and connection, I think.
And it's not just about finding answers, is it? It's about embracing the mystery and asking those questions that push us beyond, our current understanding.
That's a great point, yeah. This eclipse, like any really significant event, is this opportunity for us to expand our awareness, challenge our assumptions, and maybe even discover something totally new about ourselves in the process, right?
Okay, so we've talked about the science, we've talked about the symbolism, and we've talked about the personal growth potential of this eclipse.
Yeah.
But before we wrap things up, I have to know, are you going to be watching this eclipse on March 13th?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
What's your plan?
I'm planning on finding a nice spot with clear skies, maybe with some friends, and just, soaking it all in. There's something truly awe-inspiring about witnessing a total lunar eclipse, especially when you understand all those complex celestial mechanics at play.
I hear you. I'm already picturing myself bundled up in a blanket, gazing up at the night sky.
Yeah.
And maybe even, you doing a little journaling under that red moonlight. It's like a cosmic invitation to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
It is a reminder that we're part of something vast and extraordinary.
Well said. So for our listeners out there, I hope this deep dive has, sparked your curiosity and maybe even inspired you to experience this total lunar eclipse in a whole new way.
Yeah. Whether you're captivated by the scientific marvel of a spacecraft navigating a cosmic blackout,
Yeah.
Or intrigued by the astrological interpretations, or simply just drawn to the beauty of this celestial event, just remember to look up and let yourself be awed by the wonders of the universe.
And who knows, maybe this eclipse will spark a new discovery, a shift in perspective, or even a personal transformation.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless.
They are. That's the beauty of it all, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's always something new to learn, something more to explore.
absolutely.
Until next time, listeners, keep looking up and keep exploring. We'll catch you on our next deep dive.